home wrecker or just a girl who can't say no? Let's find out. Nice to meet both of you. Welcome to my casa.
Do you know, I wanted to get inside this house for years.
Welcome to One on One. My guest this week is the lovely Anthea Turner.
That was very kind of you to say that.
Well, I thought you were a she-devil, but now that I've met you, I'm a man. When I do these interviews, what I do is I get my good friend Dragana to do a 9-key test. Yeah, we've been on your cooking program, and it was fantastic. And what I get her to do is work out your numbers in 9-key, which is one of the oldest forms of astrology known to mankind. And you are a 454.
See, that means nothing to me.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a few pointers, and you could say, oh, it's rubbish, or you believe it.
Right.
454s love sex.
Okay. I do.
Usually on their own terms, though.
If I don't feel like it,
yeah,
nothing can persuade me. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. That's a lie. No, something can.
So what sort of things? What sort of things persuade you? Diamonds?
No. I think my husband knows the buttons to press.
Okay. And the other side of the 454 is that you have this really nurturing, quite kind side. But there's another side of you that will go through a brick wall if you think you're right about something. Is that good?
Yeah, I'll go along with that. I think that's very good.
And this year you've been in a 1 year, which is a very emotional year. The year before was a 9 year, where you had all your kind of trial by media stuff, where you were sort of portrayed as a she-devil.
Awful person.
So are you a she-devil?
Of course not.
I mean, now that I've met you, I know you are, but I just want to hear it from your mouth. So what do you think people think of you?
Well, God, it's terrible.
What a difficult question, but you know, you're going to have to answer it.
Difficult question. First question is like the one I dread. I still don't think I'm far enough away from that sort of too difficult 2.5 years of very, very difficult emotional times to be able to give you the complete overview. But I know, first of all, that I am exactly the same person that I was when I started off on like Blue Peter in 1992. I have never changed. But it's this media perception versus reality that I think we all have a big problem with, and you've been through it, I've been through it, and many, many other people will go through it. And we have to acknowledge everybody likes a good story, and we love reading it as well, and I'm just as bad as the next person. And so
like
they had
holidays, someone else's misery.
In some ways, we read a bad story because, in actual fact, it makes us feel better about our own lives. The inadequacies in our own lives, we feel much better about when we realise that everybody else is flawed. We're human beings. We're fundamentally flawed. Now, what happened was, the way I see it at the moment, and I think I'll probably be more eloquent on this, maybe in 5 years' time, but. You know, I'd Blue Petered it, you know, squeaky clean, lovely, you know, married. It was all very easy, really. Move into GMTV, and the press created it. I didn't. It's this, you know, girl next door, and it was. And I did very light television of my own choosing. I have that. That's what I'm best suited to. At the end of the day, that is me, and the me that you saw then is still the me now. But then I did something which sort of threw everybody and gave the press the story that they wanted. Much better to take somebody who was perceived as squeaky clean, girl next door. So it's like me with my drugs thing. Yeah, pull them down and make them into the Antichrist. Because if I had been a fairly sassy, you know, ladette to start off with, it wouldn't have been a story because it would have been expected of me in some way. It would have been no shock. But it was a shock because it was me, it was Anthea, who was supposed to be wholesome and good. And there I am seen as, and I suppose this is the way it looks from the outside, the reality is very different, that I took a happy man from a happy home and made him, tore him away from his family and said, you have got to come with me, you have to live, I am going to break up this happy home. The reality, as all intelligent people know, it is not that simple. Many people have been through it themselves and will tell you it's not that simple. But the story had to be, there had to be a victim, there had to be an evil person, there had to be a heroine, there had to be a love rat, there had to be innocent children, and it made up a fantastic story.
So after being lampooned so heavily by the media, did it change your attitude towards the press?
Well, up until that point, I think I'd always had, you know, a reasonable relationship with the press. Never brilliant, who does?
You thought they loved you?
Well, no. Oh, no. I wouldn't go that far. But I just saw it as part of the business. It was part of what I did. If I wanted to promote a TV show, I needed their help. I needed to get column inches. And so therefore, if something is amiss in your personal life, you can't be stamping your feet and saying, I want privacy, get out, because it is a two-way thing. But I always believed that there was a balance, and all of a sudden, that balance just tipped horrendously.
Well, they always have the final word.
Of course they do, and they will always win. You will never win. And I think what I tried to do, and I probably regret now, is I tried to explain myself. Because I felt there was an injustice here, and you've just said that part of me will, you know, walk through a brick wall if you think something was right. I knew what I was doing was not a bad thing. I knew that at the end of the day, everybody would be happier, and there were very, very solid reasons for doing everything that I had done, and most of it was actually done just for love of somebody, a deep love for somebody. It's not nice to be hated so much or not liked, and to have all these columnists scribbling about you and saying these vile things. And I know there are people who say, well, you shouldn't take any notice of it, but actually I do take notice of it.
Well, that's very Gemini.
And it does hurt.
I read everything.
I do. I mean, I have tried to stop now because, and I think I just take one newspaper because, you see, I believe actually it's got worse. I don't think it was as bad in the 80s and the early 90s, and I think it's got progressively worse. And I don't quite know where it's all going to stop. And I tried to redress the balance. I tried to say, you know, it is not right. But whatever you say, for every action, there's a reaction, there's an opposite. And somebody's going to have another, you know, bite at you. And then sort of sorted all that out. And then, and to this day, I can still wake up in a cold sweat over this. Grant and I got married. And yeah, I did do a deal with a magazine, and I will regret that. I will always regret that, because I chose the wrong people to work with. And they sort of, you know, had me up like a kipper and sold me down the line to the national press with a really stupid picture of me eating a piece of chocolate.
I might have written about that, actually.
And then, no, and you probably have. But I gave it to you on a plate, didn't I? It was there on a plate.
Now, go on.
I never could. For everybody. So I don't say they were wrong to write and have a go. But the fact was, again, I'd had nothing to do with that.
Don't feel bad, because I actually slagged off OK and Hello in my column in the Express. And I was at a party 2 weeks ago, and someone came up and said, we've heard you've had your house decorated and we'd love to come a photograph.
You said how much?
Of course. I said how much, and I thought, okay, that'll pay for the bathroom. So we're all hypocrites.
Of course, you know, and I thought, well, look, at the end of the day, you know, newspapers sell themselves. People pay money to buy those newspapers. They only put things in those newspapers that are going to sell. There's obviously a price on my head for these pictures. Why should they have them for nothing? I'll do a deal with the magazine. I spent all the money on my friends, gave everybody a great party, and there was no more thought went into it than that. But of course, it was all twisted and changed, and that awful situation with that chocolate company, which I had nothing to do with, but it gave everybody another fantastic opportunity.
Well, it was funny though. It was funny.
It was funny to everybody.
At least I thought it was funny.
You see, it was funny to everybody else, but I was mortified. you know, just from the other side, this was the most beautiful day of my life. It was the most
Well, at least
gorgeous
you weren't lying
wedding.
on a beige sofa,
And
you know, with a painting of you and Grant behind yourself. Come on, I mean, it could have been worse.
who did that?
The Beckhams do that in every picture.
Oh, God.
Obviously, Grant's behaviour around that time didn't particularly help things because it was really sort of like,
again,
you are, you aren't. You know.
That all very difficult. This man is in a terrible situation because Grant is not the sort of, and I have to love him so much for this, that he did grieve for his children. He could not deal with not being with his children at the time. He was being sort of told, you'll never see your children again, you know, broken up with family, blah, blah, blah. And I was with a man who was beside himself because, and he's a real dad, he's a real hands-on dad. He's not one of these dads who just walks in, taps them on the head and goes, you know, I'm going to read the paper, be quiet. You know, I'll come up and say goodnight to you.
You're like my father.
He wasn't like that.
That's terrible.
No.
It's my time, silent. Put the kids to bed.
No, Grant's he's a dad. He's like my dad, you know, he baths the kids, he cooks for them, he takes them out, and he absolutely adores them. And he was just in a terrible state because of the children. And I think he had to go back and find out that you can't stay together for the sake of the children because it was never going to work.
Because we checked Grant's numbers as well. We didn't delve quite as deep because I wasn't sure how you'd feel about that. But one of his main qualities is that he's an absolute dreamer.
Yeah, he is. He spends, he is a bit.
That's about all I could find out. Well, there were some other things, but let's not go there. I haven't slept with him, don't worry. So, do you think you could live without fame?
It's all part of me now, really.
If you had to choose love or fame, which would you choose?
Oh, love.
So Gemini.
Every single time.
See, I think that the thing about fame is, as a fellow Gemini, I think that I love fame, but when I want to switch it off, I want it off.
Yeah. Fame is actually, there are probably as many ups as there are downs, and if your glass is sort of half full, you can go, well, in actual fact, it opens more doors than it's ever shut in my face. I actually quite like sometimes to be able to use it, to have the opportunities that it affords you. And I respect it because I know what it took to get here. It's been a bit of a rocky old path, but actually I do respect fame and I respect the business, which probably is why I get very upset and take it too personally when things go wrong.
So in terms of like, you know, sort of showbiz pals, who would you say is your kind of closest? I said I don't have any.
Do you know,
one of the weirdest things for me ever was meeting Margaret Thatcher because I hate her. I mean, I'm such a labourer, you know, and it's like, I was at some party and it was, ironically enough, for Alzheimer's disease, and there she was, sitting there.
What was she like?
What was no? I didn't actually really get to speak to it. It was like meeting it was like meeting Nelson's column. I was kind of sitting.
Tall and erect.
I was sort of sitting there, and I saw her come in, and couldn't really control my sort of excitement of like.
Did she have a presence?
Well, that hair's like ice cream. You know, it's like this ice cream hairdo.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting with my friends, and suddenly she walks in with Dennis, and I'm like, and thinking, no, it's Margaret Thatcher. I hate Margaret Thatcher, but she's so much a part of my life. I couldn't help stare. And one of the people from the charity came up and said, would you please be photographed with her? And I was like, no, I can't do that.
Because
it's against all my political, sexual principles.
You've got to put politics to one side when it comes to that.
Well, you see,
she fascinates me. And it's nothing to do with politics.
No, but my best friend was like, imagine the picture though. You could put it in your loo. I was like, and there was that sort of Gemini part of me that thought, I really want to do the photo, but I'll hate myself forever if I do it. But I did it.
Oh.
So, as far as the media is concerned, do you think women were crueler to you than male journalists?
Probably on ratio, yeah. Which in some ways...
It's typical.
Well, it is typical, but then you're saddened by that because you think, look, hold on a second. You know, half of the people that are writing about me and making these judgments have been through very similar situations themselves, and surely, by the nature of their job, are women of the world. But again, I have to go back to, I acknowledge it was all a great story.
It's a bit like me with the gay press. You know, I read things in the gay press and I think, hold on, I'm gay. You can't slag me off. But I guess they can, because not everyone's going to love you. But the problem with Geminis is that we're driven by that sort of awful desire to be loved by everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I mean, it's, I'm admitting it to you because we're talking about this.
Well, you're but a Gemini. It's like all four of us in one room at the same time. It's
there's an awful feeling. We are at our worst when we're not loved, and I don't mean that by absolutely everybody. But you need to be loved and you need to be secure. But that the feelings that I was getting actually started to really get to me.
So have you ever had any kind of therapy or counselling?
Well, I did. Probably about 12 months ago, get to the stage where I felt so down that I thought I've got to go and see somebody. I can't bore my friends with this. And if you're not careful, it starts to affect your relationship, which was the one thing you thought you'd fought so hard for.
So you think you're already too kind of self-analytical?
Yes.
See, I go to therapy, and my therapist says, who's being analysed here?
Yeah.
You know, I get that quite regularly. It's like, are you counselling me or am I counselling you?
I had a bit of that as well.
I get that a lot.
Well, look, you sound like you've worked it all out.
I'm great at giving advice. So if you came to me 2 years ago with your troubles,
I should have done.
I'd be brilliant. I would have given you the best advice, but applying it to my own life,
can't do it.
Can't do it. See, knowing and doing are a goal for part. You know, it's
great.
Like,
well, okay. So what would the deal is that you give me advice? I'll give you advice.
Why don't you give me some advice?
Brilliant. You tell me your troubles and I'll give you all the advice you need.
Where shall I start? How long you got?
As long as you want.
The thing that makes me the most furious when people call me a pantomime dame. I want to slit their throats, burn their houses down.
But you know, the thing is, it's lazy journalism. They sit there. It's like squeaky clean girl next door.
Exactly.
Boy George, pantomime dame.
Because I wear makeup.
And you just think,
I'm as far away from Danny DeRue as we are from Miles. Believe me, trust me on that. But what is the worst thing that could be said about you?
Actually, I'll tell you the worst thing that was said about me, and it was in the Daily Mail a few weeks ago. It was an Irish gentleman who I used to work with who called me a hideous bully.
Oh, I couldn't imagine that, being a Gemini.
And I read this, and I'm just thinking, and in the piece, he gave an instance where I'm supposed to have reduced a makeup man to tears.
But did you?
No, well, there's only one makeup man at GMTV, and he's a guy called Simon J. He was my friend then. We have never fallen out. Maybe we've had a discussion over a shade of lipstick, but you know, I know we've never fallen out. I've never reduced him to tears. And Simon and his boyfriend breed golden retrievers, and he gave me my 2 dogs, who I love and adore. We are friends. He came to my wedding, and I rang him up and I said, Simon, I know I shouldn't take this seriously, but haven't we ever had? Because you start to think, did I do something?
Because I know I've made lots of makeup people cry. I mean, you know, through the 80s. I mean, it was nothing to do with not thinking the person could do a good job. It was just this thing of like, I do myself. So I think I upset quite a lot of people, not willfully.
Well, I know, categorically. And I rang Simon up and I said, did I ever reduce your tears? He went, no, what are you talking about? I said, well, is it a story? He went, no, absolutely not. It never happened. It's a figment of the man's imagination. Bullying is just about, to me, is the worst. I had a little bit of it at school. I don't know about you. Did you?
Oh.
You would, I mean, God. and the one thing that probably gets me out of my pram quicker than anything else is the thought that somebody, whether I know them or not, is being bullied.
What about the idea of somebody, you know, sort of walking around out there in the big bad world hating you?
think there are probably people who do.
Any names?
Well, I can't name names, but I know there are. Well, I don't like that because we have a little ego, don't we? In this sort of little Gemini ego.
Little? Okay. I wouldn't describe it as little.
All right.
I would say it was big as the Grand
Canyon.
No,
it's a pride. It's a pride. Some people say to me, God, I don't care what people think about me. I'm not bothered. And I think, well, either you're lying or you really are.
I think there are people out there who don't care. Joan Collins.
It doesn't care. I care.
She's definitely someone who doesn't care.
But did she not? Really?
I don't think so. I believe her.
See, I do.
See, if I heard her say that, I'd believe her. Especially if she was kind of putting out a cigarette and a plate of prawns. So if you could go back 2 years, what would you have done differently?
I would have done exactly the same when it comes to my love for my now husband.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have changed. Nothing would have deviated me from that because...
So that's the brick wall in you?
That was a brick wall. That was a love that I couldn't... there's no way I could give that up.
Well, you can't help who you fancy.
You can't.
And you certainly can't help who you fall in love with.
What I would have done was I probably would have not tried to rationalise things in the way that I did. You know, I was cause and effect. I've got to rationalise everything. I analyse things.
So you felt that you were too apologetic?
I think I was too apologetic. I tried to explain myself. What wouldn't I have done? I wouldn't have done the magazine-y wedding thing. Seemed like a good idea at the time. I probably chose the wrong people to deal with. That was all.
Well, there's only two, okay and hello, isn't
yeah,
it?
Yeah.
If you had to think of a song that summed you up, what would that song be?
Well, I went rifling through my little collection here and I bought things for me. So, and because of the conversation that we've had today, this is, have you seen the Rat Pack film yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so this is the original, Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. And I think you're nobody till somebody loves you. Because that's the one thing, and we've just said, I couldn't live without it. Couldn't live without love. And the times when I've been at my most wretched is when I've felt not loved.
You're nobody till somebody loves you. You're nobody till somebody cares.
There's only one guy who takes longer to get ready than me.